Okay, so today, welcome to the Wealth Creation Show. This is all about the new rule. So, what I mean by that? Well, let's start by talking about something that might sound uncomfortable.
Okay.
The rules that you were taught about money don't work anymore. There was a time when doing everything right meant something. You got a stable job, you worked hard, you worked smart, you saved what you could, you bought a house. Not really sure that's the right thing to do now. And eventually retired. Good luck on your retirement, by the way, if you can retire, because I have a sneaking suspicion once we're finished with this, you'll realise that you're probably going to work till you die, unless you do something about it now. But look around today. Wages are rising slowly, not as fast as they did before, but costs are rising fast. Inflation's gone up to 3.3%. And property prices, they've moved into a completely different league. So here's the truth. If you're still playing by the old rules, you're not standing still, but you're actually falling behind. So you actually, it's a misconception. You think you're moving forward, which you really are, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not really moving forward as fast as you should have. So technically, yes, you're falling behind. So today, this game has actually changed. And we're going to show you these new rules and what they apply. I mean, they're not theory and they're not hype, but it's a real shift in how wealth is created today. And more importantly, how you can start applying it immediately to yourself. For me, I think that is fundamental when we get into that, Richard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's indoctored into us from parents, grandparents about this whole, like you're saying, get a job, work hard, save money, buy a house, and then retire. And that's, but this it's all changed and the world's changed so much. And things like you say obviously highlighted the pension thing. And of course, state pensions by the time, say, I'm retired, probably they won't exist. And was I going to just depend on a workplace pension? And doing this show and learning for you, I've got a personal pension and I put X amount into that and make sure that, you know, and that's one of the things that I'm doing preparing for the future. But I think if I hadn't obviously learned from you or done this show, would I be thinking like that?
Everybody that relies on a workplace pension right now, and that's all they're relying on, are literally going to be as bad off or as worse off than everybody is right now retiring.
Yeah.
And let me explain that, because you're all going to rely on a workplace pension, and the workplace pension is more or less going to accelerate your income to the income that everybody else is going to accelerate to. So inflation is going to take that into account, and everybody's purchasing power is going to go up to the same level. So therefore, guess what? You're exactly where you were before. It's the like for like when you're buying and selling houses. If you live in the house that you live in because you need that house, not because it's an investment for your future. In monetary terms, I mean. Because what happens is your house goes up in value to 100 to 200 to 300,000, everybody else's house goes up in the same area at the same value as well, in terms of proportionally. So when you go to sell your house and you go to buy another house, you're just trading like for like. All you're doing is hedging yourself on the market. So you don't have any to take into, so you don't have any repercussions of the increases that are to come. But if the market decreases, then you're trading like for like. But if you're renting and the market decreases, happy days.
Yeah.
Because you're getting a bargain, because you're going straight into buying something that's reduced in price. And you're technically locking in a gain, because we know when a crash happens or a correction happens, then it bounces back over the next 10 years quite rapidly, and then starts to double over and even a bit more over the next 20 years. And that's what people do not realize about this. I'm going to call it a game, because really, well, it is.
It is, and you need to know how to play it correctly,
Yeah, and then you have to know the rules. I think that's the most important. And this is why we said, what is the new rules? That's what it is. I mean, so exactly, what is the new rule?
Yeah, the new rule, when we refer to it as such, I think comes down to three fundamental things, and that's the leverage, your ownership of things, and how to then scale up as well.
Absolutely. And as soon as you said leverage, I just grabbed for my calculator. It's just the first thing I do. Leverage. That involves numbers. That involves finance. That involves taking other assets or other opportunities, maybe the bank's money, maybe other people's money, and actually using that to leverage your position. So if you've got, for example, 50,000 and somebody else has got 100,000, like the bank, then you borrow that money at a lower rate from the bank at 100,000, and that pulls to your interest about you've got 150,000 purchasing power to invest. And if you can know that you can guarantee yourself a return which is more than the bank, then you're making the marginal difference. So if the bank's borrowing to you at 5% and you're making 15, you're making a 10% differential every single time on the bank's money. It's not your money. You're actually making money on somebody else's money.
Yeah,
that's capitalism. That's the way it works.
And that's exactly what you've done with your buy-to-let portfolio. You've used the bank's money. You've obviously used that money, bought property, and scaled it up for there.
I've just used money out of thin air sometimes.
But then you've only been able to do that, Jim, because
money it doesn't actually. But I've used money; it doesn't actually exist in your hand. You can't do anything with it.
Currency, basically.
Because you're using what you're using is existing assets to borrow against in order to get that funding from the bank, and that's how you're doing it. But the existing assets that you had, you didn't have in the beginning, and it was a natural progression of the compounding interest that you had on these assets. It enabled you to borrow against that to get the money from the bank, which you wouldn't have got before.
Yeah,
it's like one of these. There's one of these classic twists in Dallas or something like that. I don't know. Whatever the new classic twist is, EastEnders, that sort of thing.
And then that further lending, where you've obviously used your current assets and things to further lend and further scale up and things, you've obviously demonstrated that to the lender, i.e. the bank, that you're in that position and they're quite happy to lend to you. It's all about the numbers and making a clear. You've obviously presented a clear plan to them.
Everybody is how a bank works is basically a bank's using what we could more or less say fictitious value to borrow against in order to give you money, and it's a pretty precarious situation to be in for a bank. Hence the reason why the credit crunch came along, because they weren't so determined to proof of funds and stuff like that when you did that. So that's why they left themselves exposed. Whereas, nowadays you kind of got to prove it. You've got what you've got. So that takes value in your existing properties and your existing stock in order to determine is there something we can take a security against in order to lend to this person. But here's the reality. Today, attention is the opportunity. Whether it's online in business or in the net or in your network, the more people you can reach, I think possibly the more doors open.
Yeah, creates opportunity. I mean, as a prime example, Jim, you've created a lot of attention around you in a good way for certain things. And even when it comes to, like, when you think back to the beginning of your journey, when you used to speak to the bank managers and things, but you had a lot of attention around you because you were basically rolling out the buy-to-let mortgage model to the banks, basically. And they picked up on that, and that opened a lot of opportunities for you and a lot of other people now.
Definitely. I just used to walk into the bank and have a plan straight in place, and I used to hand it to them. And the banks turned around to me and says, how could we say no? You just make this proposition look so attractive, and it's all facts. So how could we say no to that? That makes absolute sense to us. So I think that's the most important thing. But what you have to do is you have to build a bank of assets, though.
Yeah, and the assets is where real wealth lies. People could think maybe, oh, my paycheck and my savings account and things, there's money in that, but that's not where you're going to build wealth unless you use it. Unless you use it.
Look at your job. Your job is really an asset because you've got ability to earn out of that job. So you can use that as a bit of leverage as well. I mean, you know yourself, and everybody else knows, listening and tuning into this, that when you go to a bank to open an account, they first of all go, well, we're going to give you more benefits if you pay your salary in there every single month. Yeah. So there's an asset you're using kind of already. It's It's an intangible, if that makes sense. It doesn't actually exist. It's no touchy-feely, thing. It's no physical, but it's intangible. It's there. It can create, and it will come in every single month. So that gives them a degree of certainty, especially when they go to give you lending for a mortgage for your house. So that's kind of like it as well.
And in the early stages, like if you're doing an investment journey and things, if you treat your job like an asset, and the more you put in, the more you'll get out, and then it enables you to have more to then and further invest elsewhere.
Yeah, but when you get down to the real assets, when you look at it, it's not really the paycheck, it's not really the savings. It's things like your businesses, your businesses, and more importantly, your property and actual physical presence assets. Because and also actually a really good one, which I used in the very beginning to borrow against, was investment plans, which had a guaranteed payout. So in other words, if the market tanked that day, I know I was going to get 20,000 anyway, because it had built up that in reserves, and it said it will mature at 20. If you cashed it today, you'll get 20 grand, and that's guaranteed. That is not, because it's locked in. So there was no downside to that for them. So they went, well, we could let you borrow against 20 grand. Yeah, it's exactly on the bigger scale what your billionaires do with their assets, with their shares in their companies. The company's worth a certain amount, and they say, well, I tell you what, we'll let you borrow against 50% of the value of the shares that you've got right now. And then they've got the equity there. So if the market starts to drop, they can sell it 50% and get all their money back, no bother. They've got no exposure at all.
Yeah, that's like when Elon Musk was purchasing Twitter and things for X amount of billions, whatever it was. Do you know, he didn't physically, hand over that amount of money. It was
and you don't cash it in either. You just use it as security. That's it all. That's all. Because so the bank could actually realise it if it needs to. But here's something most people actually miss. The income pays your bills. And I always talk about this. So the income that you generate is the day-to-day living. But the assets that you have is the wealth it creates for your lifestyle to come.
Yeah.
Now, notice I said to come, delayed gratification, because the income's here now. The assets is what gets in the future, but also accumulates in wealth, the assets. If you leave the income in, and that accumulates in wealth as well, and builds that portfolio for you. And it's not just incremental income, it's exponential income it creates. And what I mean by that is incremental is £1 plus £2 plus £3 plus £4.
It's the compound.
So £1, adding on each other. That's incremental. Exponential is compounding. It's 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 20, 32 to 64 to 128, 256, 512. So that's how that goes. So it's exponential growth that your assets create, and as long as you don't touch them, as long as you don't touch the income from them. So this is why I'm a big fan of just go and get a job and
keep your job and do that.
Yeah. Because you've got two incomes. You've diversified your income stream and your risk straight away by keeping your existing job and actually building something on the side to possibly replace your job, or even just create that lifestyle for later on when you retire from your job. And I think that's the most important thing. And property is one of the most powerful assets, because it does those two things. It generates that income through the rent it creates in order to pay all the overheads and bills and the mortgages and that, if you've got that on it.
Letting agents and all the rest of it.
But the most valuable thing is the capital growth you get from that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The appreciation. It's mind-blowing.
But you need to be prepared to wait. You need to be able to be patient with that, because it's
this is the patience that people don't realise. Okay, so you're 2 years in, you've got 100,000 in equity now, and if you get 5% of an increase in a year, okay, so that's 5% in terms of property value, then you're getting £5,000 for 100,000 you got in. But could you imagine if that accumulates and to get to year 10, and all of a sudden that's £1 million. But £1 million, if 5% of £1 million is now, guess what? 50 grand. Now, if you were in 50 grand a year, would you really bother working ever again? If you're a bit older, probably not.
You're at that stage in life, that would be enough to keep you comfortable.
Tell you what, I'll just take it easy, because then I could always cash the $1 million in at some point in time and add another 20 grand each year to that. And 20 grand of the million is basically, when you look at that, and I will do it on here because I always sometimes get it wrong, is 50 years. You're not going to last another 50 years when you're at your retirement, sort of about 50-year-old. You might last another 50 years to 100, but even if you do, you'll be on 70 grand a year then, if that's the case. Now, it doesn't index, but then remember, rents go up as well.
Yeah.
Happy days. You're in a business which actually it continues to go up in value on both sides, more or less, on the long term. And history has shown that every single time. The third, though, what is the third one, Richard?
If you've got this, if you're trying to build that kind of thing, you need to have automation, basically systems and processes, and have things running without your physical input all the time.
Yeah.
The ability to earn without trading your time constantly and having things evolve around you.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the fact about when you think about automation and the job is trading time for money, clearly. But what's happening with property investment, for example, is you grow rich while you sleep. I'll say that again. You grow rich while you sleep. You're probably better off net worth wise in the morning after sleeping the night before, and you've not even done anything except went to your bed.
That's an amazing feeling to wake up to.
Yeah, and that's effectively, and I mean, it's on a scale where somebody's got one or two properties, then it's pounds probably. But if you've got a mass scale here and you've got maybe 100, 200, 300 properties, then that's a huge thing when you look at it like that. And literally, if you've got 100 properties, for example, and we've got a portfolio of 10 million, and then you're looking at 10 million, and then you're multiplying it by 0.5, which is the 500,000 a year you would do, divide it by 365, and that night you went to sleep, you got up in the morning £1,370 more richer.
Kind of grumble at that.
Right, 1,370 quid for going to sleep. I'm all right with that.
Yeah.
Plus the fact you're getting income over and above. Now that'll be taxable, and somebody will jump on that and say, "Oh, that's taxable." Who cares?
Of course it is.
It's like you never had it in the first place. What are you doing, sitting in the cheap seat criticising? Well, we are making it happen. I've got to laugh at some of these people that actually jump in and go, "Oh, well, you've done this and you've not done that right, and you've not done this right." It's like, what are you doing? I'm sitting in my bedroom as a keyboard warrior. Well, there you go then. What does that tell you? And I think that's it. So you're right, automation. Think about it. A rental property doesn't take the day off. A well-structured investment that keeps working even when you're not. Lying on the beach.
Yeah, that kind of set. That's the new rule, really. This is the new rule that we're trying to talk about. It's not about, like you say, working harder. It's about making your time work harder, and building systems and owning things that work for you rather than you working in them or for them all the time.
The systems are the most important key here. And this is where self-managed landlords, in my opinion, do it wrong. And I was a self-managed landlord in the beginning, and they do it wrong because what happens is they get involved in just trying to do it all themselves because they think they're going to save money, when in actual fact it takes them away from what they should really be doing, is acquiring more assets in a more structured way, or in a more imaginative or creative way, if that makes sense. So in other words, joint venturing and other things that you can do that maybe you can't do just now because you've not got the ability with the equity or the money to do it. Because it's better to have 30% of something than 100% of nothing.
Yeah.
So taking someone else's money and getting them to actually invest and buy the property, and you manage it, and for that you get 30% of the value in that joint venture, then that's 30% for doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway. And you're actually getting a management fee as well because you're managing the property for that person. Yeah. So there's a win-win there. Definitely.
Yeah, and every business is the same, and systems are so important. Even running letting agency and property management systems and things. If there's not a system and it evolves around one person, it's never going to work.
Absolutely. So so the key here as well is then, so why do most people stay broke if this is so obvious?
Yeah, because we make it sound very simple, and a lot of people still do.
Well, I believe it or not, it is that simple.
Yeah,
it's like, and because it's that simple, we've been taught to be afraid of things that are simple. And it's the if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is mentality. And yes, I completely can't disagree with that statement. But there is occasions where, you just got to put yourself out there and go, okay, this does work. And it took me a long time to understand that. And when I understood it, I just went crazy and started buying everything.
To me, it's probably, like you're saying, it's the penny dropped thing, or the point of readiness. Whereas I think a lot of people, they get stuck in their old patterns and things, and that's why they never become, they stay broke and don't join the winning team, basically, which is a very small percentage.
Well, it's time for money, isn't it? The people get stuck in that old pattern, and they just trade. They tell you what, if I work more hours, I'll make more money. It's like, but you've only got another finite hours in the week. I mean, you've got 168, and you've got to sleep a third of that at least.
Yeah, there's a limit.
Take yourself on track. So you're limited straight away by your earning. But it does create a ceiling then. And the objective here is you have to make sure you lift that lid off, and you actually get that ceiling away, and you actually learn to get above there and understand how to get above there. The second trap is really lack of exposure to assets.
Yeah, and finding the people to develop your knowledge on things because a lot of people haven't taught about how property works, property investment, how other investments work, or how wealth is actually built. That's not taught. You need to be savvy enough to think, right, I need to source the people that I'm going to be able to learn for here to actually learn how to do this.
Yeah. I find no one is successful at property really wants to teach anybody else how to do it, to be honest. I find the only people that really want to teach other people how to build wealth and property is people that actually want to make money out of that teaching process.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing now. Down to the fact that they've not got a job and that's it. So this is their job. So yeah, you could replace that and say these people are just working. That's their job to do that. But I'm a big fan of. Okay, so then that means you could only teach that person to give up their existing job and teach people to train in property and build wealth that way, because that's all you're doing. You don't know any different
job instead.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then my take on that is then why on earth would you then give up your existing job, which you're probably pretty good at and everybody likes you in it, and it gives you your pension, it gives you your holidays, and you're settled in it, to then just take a chance and start doing something completely different, which really puts a lot of risk on what you need to do. So that's my take on that. Let's move on and say about the third trap. Lifestyle inflation. This is so important.
Yeah.
The moment income goes up, guess what happens next? People just go to spend it. What can I spend on? I've got another, because it's a classic example. I've got a salary rise. I've got a promotion. I'm getting another 500 quid a month. We can go on holiday next month. It's like, well, I've got a 500 quid rise. It doesn't mean to say we've got to spend it straight away. But this is how our society is geared. I've said it before, but if you watch every single program, it has a jackpot to win. Everybody says, not what you're going to do with it anymore, it's what you're going to spend it on.
I see a lot of the postcode lottery just now, and that's what it is. What are you going to buy? They're giving them this check for it. What are you going to buy? What are you going to spend it on?
They don't want you to say, "Oh, I'm going to invest it and squirrel it away," because that's no any good to their advertising campaign. They want to create people that are consumers, and they want to create people that want things in their adverts. So people then go, "Oh, I could play the lottery and I could have all these nice things as well." No, I could play the lottery and I could just invest it in a fund
and set myself up for life.
Yeah, that's pretty boring, isn't it?
And set my kids up for life and things. Yeah.
See how they've done that. So it's the bigger car, the bigger holidays, the nicer things. But here's the problem with that. The money could have been used as a deposit to grow assets, to buy assets and grow. Whether it's a fund or anything else, whether it's a property, and that could be your turning point for doing that. Most people really only buy that one home to live in, don't they?
Yeah.
And then they stop there. I mean, if you look at Scotland, I think it's 200,000, maybe 250 at the very most. Out of 6 million people actually own another property.
Which is
some people own several. Yeah. Some people own one or two. Majority own one or two. Some people own 3 or more. Some people own a lot more. And this is what they don't understand. This is where it's a turning point for. But most people buy into that one home. The shift here is, as I said before, the home is the comfort you have and the security you give yourself, and the fact that you've got somewhere to go. Okay? Investment property doesn't work like that. This is a strategy overall. One keeps you stable. Okay?
Yeah.
The other builds your future.
Yeah, your future and ultimately a legacy you could leave. You've got children and thinking ahead.
So when we talk about the new wealth model, what are we talking about then? What in a simplified way, what is this going to look like?
If you try and simplify it into a kind of clear model, it's you look at the earning and then how to multiply that, and then ultimately the owning of obviously assets and things out with, like you say, not just your own home, but multiple homes, and having them firstly earn.
This is what I say every time. When you look at it in nuts and bolts, I mean, this sounds so obvious, doesn't it? But it's amazing how many people don't do that in their day-to-day life. It's the earning point is the starting point, like we talked about. It's the job. It's maybe the business that you run as well. It's maybe both. You maybe have a business outside of your job. It's your income stream. The goal is simple: to create a surplus. Notice how I never said profit, because profit seems to be a dirty word for some reason.
It's a lot of people don't like it.
It's to create a surplus. To create a surplus of cash, because without a surplus, there's nothing to invest.
Yeah, and unless you're
it's the same with business. You need a surplus to buy capital equipment for the future to invest in order to grow the business or to keep the business going. When you're depreciating assets, the assets that you buy in the beginning, the machines, the cars and everything begin to run out, you need money to replace that. That comes from profits.
Yeah, you're absolutely. If it's a business, say that it's got machinery, they need maintenance and then ultimately replacement. If it's a house that's a part of an investment portfolio, it needs maintenance and upgraded and things. So to keep it in good condition, or you're not going to be able to use it for its purpose.
And that's the second one, it's multiply. That's what we're really saying. And this is where things are actually changing. It's instead of spending your surplus, you actually invest it in something for the future. And one of the most powerful ways to do that, and in my opinion, I'll tell you what, if anybody out there could show me something different and makes more money than I make in property, I'll do that as well. I'll guarantee you probably won't. In hindsight, you'll point to me and say, oh, so-and-so did this, and Apple did this, and Apple did that. But I'm talking about at this point in time, from
forward thinking.
Zero, it's going to make more money than I'm going to make in property. I'll probably invest in that as well at the same time, over the long term. And I'm saying long term because, well, you know how crypto's up and down and all over the place, and how people lose money, how people gain money, and it's a complete gambled risk.
And there are opportunities to make some quick wins, but they'll never last.
For me personally, it's all about property.
Yes.
Give us an example, Richard.
So if you think about property, for example, say you've got a property that's worth 150,000, and over time that property's value is going to grow, say to 220,000. Now, you didn't work any extra hours for that increase, but then if you think about that growth and that difference, that's the capital appreciation, like we say, over time. Now you're going to
go. For me personally, can I just put a qualification on that and say, over time, we're talking about 10 years plus at this point in time
10 to 20 years.
To get that extra. No, but just to get that extra, because that's a 47% improvement on the 150 you paid for it.
Yeah.
So 47, we're usually double in value every 20 years, I would say, to be conservative and prudent about it. So I kind of think 10 years, that'll probably be about that, which is where we are. So about 10 years over a period of time, I'm qualifying that by saying that. So what else?
But the powerful part about that, you've got that capital appreciation over time. But as you said, Jim, if we take it back to when you're getting the lending from the bank, you've got all that coming through on that asset, but all you've done is put the deposit down. You've not, like you're saying, you've not put 150,000 down. You've only put the deposit, which 25%, and that's how you were able to leverage that deposit amount.
Yeah.
To that stage. But
you've probably put about 50 grand. You've probably put anything between 40 and 50 grand. Yeah. So about 25 to 30% in. The reason I say that is because you've got a wee bit of working capital to do legal fees and arrangement fees and all the rest of it. And maybe get a couple of contractors in to get your EICRs and a wee bit of tidying up in the property sale, depending on what property you actually got. So that's what you do in the difference. So your 40 grand investment, this actually sounds familiar because I bought 6 properties like this with the same money. And I've still got them today. And I bought them in 2010. And even the Inland Revenue went, how did you manage to do that? And genuinely, the Inland Revenue contacted me and says, how did you manage to do that? It's like, can you show us? Because we're not aware of this. I went, well, back to back. And they went, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You didn't know?
What, the Inland Revenue doesn't understand back to back? It's
I was just going to say.
That makes no logic at all.
Yeah.
I thought they would know that, what I meant. And so I had to actually create a spreadsheet to show them actually what I did with the 40,000 in the beginning to buy the 6 properties and have the 40,000 investment overall. They just couldn't understand it. It just baffled them. So
back to back doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, obviously.
Yeah, you can get back to 6 months later is usually what they do now. It's not back to back any longer. It's like buy, refurbish, and then refinance 6 months later. Whereas back to back was same day, which was okay with the banks at that time, but they had to kind of cut back on it because they were leaving themselves exposed again with the way everything was done. I mean, the powerful part of this is what you just said. You often control the entire asset, and you just really put a deposit down in it, and that's what we talk about leverage.
Your leverage in your possession, yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned the first one was you were talking about earning.
Earn,
multiplying. So the third one is to own. Ownership's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, but then that's, I think, what the misconception when people think ownership. They think £150,000 property. Oh, I don't have £150,000. You don't need £150,000 to own the property.
Yeah, I mean, you own the whole thing. This is the key here about leverage. You've only got 40 grand in that instance that we're saying there. You own the whole thing. So in 20 years' time, if this doubles, you make 150,000 extra on £40,000 in.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't take a dafty to work that out, but I'll put it into a calculator just so you understand that. That's 375% return on your investment.
You're not going to get that anywhere else.
Yeah, you won't. Very unlikely. And everyone could talk about, oh, well, that's from taking an inflation into account. But you usually find if inflation comes into play, you usually find property ends up moving up as well to compensate for it. But if it doesn't, who cares? You're still hedging yourself in some sort of way. You're still protecting yourself from inflationary pressure, because if you had nothing, you'd have nothing growing in value. Your money would be sitting in a bank or under your mattress, and it would be devaluing every single day. So at least you're doing something rather than nothing to grow assets and benefit from their growth.
Yeah, you benefit from their growth, and that's in terms, obviously, you've got your rental income that comes through. We've just talked about property values rising. Depending on what your mortgage lending setup is, if you're doing interest only, then your mortgage won't be getting paid down over time. You could do capital and repayment. Do you want to do that? At probably best interest only if you're doing buy-to-let investment.
This is just my personal opinion, so I have to put my disclaimer here about this is not financial advice. But personally, for me, I'm interest only, because over the long term, your value, your property will appreciate. Therefore, your equity to loan will be greater, if that makes sense. And your loan to value will be smaller over the long period because of that, because it appreciates in value. And that's just my personal preference. I do not like paying down 5% of a mortgage if I'm making 15% on that money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Why would I want to do that? I'm just losing 10% every single time then. That's bonkers. And some people actually can't understand that concept. They focus so much on security, and it's like, well, you've got security. If you need to get rid of the property, you sell it. And if it's a fire sale, you've got 25, 40% equity in it, whatever you've got left to hedge yourself against. So a fire sale is when you've just got to get rid of it at any cost. That's what a fire sale is.
Fire sale, yeah.
Yeah, any cost, get rid of it. Now, the credit crunch was 20% drop in property values. We are probably not going to experience another credit crunch. And even if we did, if you've got 40% equity, you're still coming out with 20%.
Mm-hmm. So you're still coming out with something, yeah.
You're probably coming out with a shirt on your back. What you put in the first place, because if you put in 25% in the first place, you're round about what you put in originally. Plus the fact you've probably had the income out of it, because that's not even taking into account the income actually getting invested back in. You were actually living off the income in that scenario, so you're actually better off, even though that came along. So for anybody to say this is a big risk, it's like, I do not see that at all. I've never seen that at all.
I think if you're doing your due diligence and numbers and things, you've got quite a lot of certainty with it for the most part. And then when you've got rental income coming in, like we say, you've got property values rising, then you start to really strengthen your position, but and build real wealth. But it's not something that happens quickly. But that kind of compound effect is quite powerful.
It's a slow process overall, just really, really slow. It's not quickly, but it's powerful, compounding wealth when you think about it. Because then you're looking at the thing about 1 year. Property values have gone up 3.64% in the last 20 years in Scotland anyway. Okay, so if you take that into account, you're not just making 3.64% every year on the value of your property. You're actually making the compounded effort. So and it's like a salary. It's like if you've got a £10,000 as a part-time salary, and then you get a rise of 0.5%, you're getting another 500 quid a year. But then next year, if you get another rise of 5%, you're actually getting 5% of the 500. Yeah, and it's the 1% every single day. The 1% compounded, 1%. 1% compounded every day for 365 days it doesn't end up 365%. It ends up like 2,476% instead. And it's like, what? Because you're making 1% of the 1% every single day as it passes. That's so, and it's completely predictable. This is what I saw. I just wrote a spreadsheet, and I kept the spreadsheet with me. It told me if you buy one property in year 1 and you'll do that, in year 2 you'll maybe keep that again, but you'll keep reinvesting the profits. In year 3 you'll be able to put a deposit down for another property in year 3, so you'll have 2 by year 3. In year 4 you'll be able to just miss it out again. In year 5 you'll be able to buy another property. In year 6, you'll be able to buy another property now. See how that's quickening?
Yeah.
And year 7, you can buy another one now. And year 8, you can buy another one. And year 9, you can buy another 2. And year 10, you can buy another 2. And yeah. So by the time you get to year 16, you've got about 20 odd properties. And it's like, wait a minute, in the first 6 years, I only had 2.
Yeah.
And that's what people do not realise. I think that's the most important thing. The tools for the new rule. I mean, and now here's the good news.
Okay.
You don't need to be wealthy to start the game, as I've just explained to you. Just so I've shown you that in that exact example. You start off with 1, you just understand this is just a mathematical formula. It works. And you have faith that it works because it's logical, completely. And you have to learn to be tolerant, and you have to learn to be patient, because you know it's going to take 5 years to buy 3 properties that way. But by year 10, you're probably going to have 8 or 9 by year 10. And by year 20, you probably end up going to have about 20 odd or maybe 30 odd by year 20. Doing it that way, depending on how you purchase them, if you get good value for money, if you buy below market value as well, and you lock gains in, which can be used to borrow against. The tools of today, though, when I started out compared to today, they're far better, because you can research property on your phone.
And there's so much products and lending opportunities.
I could go around and look in estate agents' windows.
Yeah, on foot.
Yeah, honestly, I had to go and look in their windows and then phone them up and say, how you getting on? You got any good deals or anything like that? You got anything that's available? And what's that one? I noticed you've got this one here. And, some of them would be on the internet, but not all of them. So I had to actually go and do some, footwork in order to go around all the solicitors because they weren't on internet. The people that were on the internet 30 years ago were some of the corporates, and that was it, really. Yeah. Independents weren't. They just didn't see the need for it at that point in time.
I mean, in today's world, you could purchase property, sort out lending, you don't even need to leave the house. I mean, recommended you should.
Well, I don't anymore.
No, but you've got people doing that, doing all the other stuff for you, obviously.
This is where today, though, you use leverage, don't you? You're saying that you can analyse everything online, which I actually do now with my spreadsheet. We've shown this on plenty of shows before, the spreadsheet. The banks will lend you money without you actually even speaking to them to acquire appreciating assets because that's what they like as well. And there's something that's something that very few people fully take advantage of. And here's why it gets even smarter. You can combine modern income with traditional assets. Building income online through skills, content, or business, and then reinvest income into property. Keep reinvesting. That's what I did in the beginning. Every time I got a promotion, I just took that money from the promotion and I said that'll be for the investment in the property.
Kept your lifestyle the same and used the additional to further your position for later on.
I would argue my lifestyle probably went down a bit because we were using the same amount of money, and obviously inflation taking into account every year. Therefore, that was eroding that spending that you've got on that existing money that you've got. But that was okay with me because I thought at some point in time I could just open the floodgates and it'll all come flooding in, and it did. Yeah, and it did. The day I retired at 38 years old,
and that's the delayed gratification thing.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, it's like really. I can what? I'm making more than my financial controller's job, financial director's job, than I am in a couple of days a week. That makes no sense to me. Baffled completely. But reinvest. Online wealth creates cash flow. Property stores and grows wealth overall. That combination is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, so you talk about, I mean, it is a game, and you need to know the rules and how to play it right, but you really need to start off with building that first kind of engine, that wealth engine. So how do you actually start that then? Do you know, that's some people might, because I think that's the question, and a lot of people, new investors, they're really enthusiastic, but just don't know how do I actually start? That's the question.
And they get in tow with the wrong person, don't they? And then they end up basically just fleecing them of their money. And they probably had to invest in property courses, or maybe their credit card balance that they used to do that. Oh, you'll get it back because you'll earn more later on and all the rest of it. So it's a really good investment. I've seen that happen. It happened to me at some point in time, and that's fine. It was either for me a blessing or a lesson. And some were lessons, and I've lost. Well, not really lost. I've learned out of these mistakes. It's simple, really. You're creating a surplus in step one.
Yeah.
Either reduce unnecessary spending. So things that you got to do the delayed gratification thing. I don't care what you say. It's like, oh no, know this again. I've heard this before from someone else. Did you do anything about it though?
So you don't know if it works. Yeah.
No. So you're probably still stony broke and thinking, there's got to be a way, there's got to be a way. Yeah, that's what it was. You missed it first time round.
Yeah, making those, we'll say sacrifices, but just maybe cutbacks and just the realms of what you're living in.
There's two things you can do in a job, isn't there? There's your own income spending that you have in your life. Okay, you can cut back on that a bit. But here's the thing, cut back on the fat that you've got. The plush holiday you go on every year, just go on a holiday, it's a bit less. And use that money, invest it, and put it aside to invest it. Or maybe don't go on the holiday at all, or maybe just go locally for a weekend away somewhere. Pitlochry, something like that.
Yeah, go camping.
Just go camping.
I feel like do something like that.
And that's the kind of delayed gratification you do. I mean, it's just as good, but it's not. You don't need it all right now. It's the classic example about, oh, I need this holiday, I deserve this holiday. And it's like, do you really? I tell you what, because that holiday is probably going to bring you down later on, and you're going to work for the rest of your life as a result of that because you didn't compound that and invest that. We've talked about this before, how buying a property, buying a car, actually, a Lamborghini Huracan, is £178,000 to buy at that time. And we've talked and worked that out. It would cost you $2 million over a 20-year period because you bought that car.
The loss that you could have if you'd used it to invest elsewhere.
Yeah, the opportunity loss that you had. So you could do both. You could increase your income by maybe moving jobs. You could increase your income by educating yourself more, being really good at your job and adding value to what you do. Not just walking into your boss and go, I want a rise because I want to invest in property. And your boss will go, there's the door.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because you've not done anything, you've not added any value. All you're doing is your day-to-day job that you normally do the now.
Yeah.
And in fact, AI could probably replace you now that you want a rise. Oh, damn. I wish I'd not mentioned it. So you got to go in with a coherent strategy about why you feel you're worth more and put that forward after all. So do both of them. You can build that deposit overall. That's a step 2. It's your entry point into property. It doesn't have to be perfect, remember. Done is better than perfect. You've got to start somewhere. But just start, for God's sake. That's the most important point.
Yeah, even if it's just that small start. And I think as well...
That's the step, small start.
Yeah, I think as well, I think people compare to others as well. And they might think, well, if I'm just doing this really small scale, it's kind of inadequate to what other people are doing. But don't concentrate on other people. Think about what you're doing and just concentrate on that. That's outside noise having an effect on what you're doing.
It is. It's the noise against the signal. And you've got to understand you want to focus on the signal, not the noise that goes on round about you. And I see this so many times where people buy a below market value deal. And it's like, okay, so how much is it going to cost you to refurb? About 50 grand. It's like, where are you going to get that? I thought you were skint. Yeah, but I've got a below market value deal. But you've got no money to refurb it.
Where are you getting the money to do this?
Yeah. Would you not be better just buying the one that was ready to go and the numbers worked for you? And that would have been an easy gig while a lower amount of money outlaid. Yeah, but everybody told me get a below market value and refinance. And it's like, and where are you going to get the money to do it? And who's going to do the work? And how's it going to take longer? And what if the market changes within that time or the economy changes in that time and the banks suddenly, or the bank interest rate decides to go up? It's like you're taking huge risks and exposure in that period of time when something's happening, possibly a war in the Gulf and stuff like that. It's what's going on now. Or there could be other things in the economy that's happening now. Unemployment could be going sky high. Interest rates could be going up because inflation's going up. And then you're sitting on your hands waiting, saying, oh, I'm going to refinance this. But by the time the refinance cost comes around, it's going to cost you just as much as what you would have done in the first place because the interest rate's too high now. And now you're goosed, and it's like, I'll have to sell it now. There you go. So if the numbers work, that's the most important thing. That's why you should focus on that. The numbers work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Always my advice is first investment properties, first, second, get something that's ready, nearly ready, possibly tenanted, but make sure you do your due diligence with that. So you've got that instant setup, and possibly if you really want to get stuck into doing the buy, refurbish and things, do that maybe your second, your third or fourth one.
Yeah, if you're working a job and you're in a really good paid position and you're working for your boss, and it's like it's going to go down well if you're coming in tired in the morning, no much fit for your job. If you're working after hours and working weekends, I mean, I've done this, and yes, it does work, but you've got to be prepared to pay a price with almost your sanity. You've got to have a screw loose in order to do it like that. And because I know what it's like to do that and pay that price. And giving up your job isn't the answer to do it, because then you're just jumping into the frying pan and effectively into the fire at that point in time.
Yeah, and always do your research for investments. I mean, any investment, but when we talk about property, think about areas that are in demand and have really reasonable prices coming through, and I've got consistent, rental potential. Because you could buy a property in an area and then it could just sit. I mean, I know there's a lot of rental demand at the moment, But that could shift, and every area is different. And you need to speak to a local professional wherever you are.
Agreed.
To give you that advice if you don't know.
And you need to watch what's going on, and your local professional will do it. I mean, a classic example today, I was just reading an article, and it says there's going to be 300 affordable homes built by Kingdom Housing.
Okay.
In the Kirkcaldy area, where the old postings used to be. And it's like,
that's what they're
thinking. Right. Now, can you imagine 300 houses affordable and for rent? Because it's Kingdom Housing. Some will be sold off on shared ownership or something like that, and some will be used as, I think there's over 55. Some will be mid-market rent, some will be social rent. And it's like, you can imagine how that's going to affect a market if you then buy a property to rent in Kirkcaldy and go, yeah, I'm going to get 800 quid a month for a one-bedroom flat. It's like, you are not going to get that after 300 flooded properties come in to the market and flood that market on that temporary basis. Because somebody will go, I tell you what, I'm just moving out and going to go to there because I now qualify for it. So they take your tenant, and then you've got a lull in the number of tenants. So your occupancy rate goes down because your rent's so high, but you can't afford to reduce your rent because that's where your numbers were stuck and worked for you. And you hadn't stress tested your investment at all. And if you want to know about stress testing, you need to speak to Richard or myself about that. But that's the whole thing. So this is why I say that's the step 4, is leave time for the heavy lifting.
Yeah,
I mean, step 4 is definitely that, I would say, because property works best over time in step 4, but it works best when someone else is doing all that work for you. And it's the old adage about you want 100% of nothing, or you want 60% of something, or 30% of something, or 90% of something. You're better to have that, but people just get locked into this. I just want to earn everything out of it. I'm not prepared to share it, and that's when it becomes fatal for some people. Definitely, rental income actually it supports the asset. Now, anybody out there that says you're paying down your landlord's mortgage, congratulations. Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. As you do when you buy a burger at McDonald's, you pay down their debts and overheads. As you do when you buy something at a retail shop. As you do when you buy a service like an architect service to do your garden, landscape, and all the rest of it. You're paying for their vans. You're paying for their employees. You're paying for the debt that they run with their business with their overdraft. Yeah. Congratulations, you've nailed it. You should be in business.
Yeah.
And they do it. They don't understand why they've just said that. And I said, yeah, you're absolutely right. It does, and it's meant to, and that's the whole point. It's just that the person that wants to rent does not want to buy a house at this point in time, or they can't afford to buy a house because of their own personal circumstances, which is their position, not your obligation. Let's give away free houses to everyone, says the Scottish Government, the new election campaign.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of it recently. But you're right about the rental income supporting the asset, and then the appreciation of your asset appreciating and your equity and things. But what you said, Jim, is quite interesting, and it's the done is better than perfect thing, and just to get something out there and do it. And if you look at things simply, and if you're starting out and think, where do I start? Approach it like in a step-by-step thing. And I put in here like a 30-day approach, and you can split it into weeks. And week 1, learn the basics. And there's loads of ways to do that. You could be listening to. I mean, we're here sharing knowledge and experience. This is not an upsell course or anything. I mean, just find people where you could learn from and learn the basics about that. That could take a week.
Well, we've got it all on the Wealth Creation Show anyway. I don't see the point actually going to anybody else to learn anything, because you're learning from somebody that's actually done it already and is way beyond everybody else.
And the likelihood is they'll probably charge you for the pleasure of that as well. And then it's move on to understanding the finances, your own finances. Where's your financial position, and how do you get into a better financial position if you need to be? And then, like I said, research. If it's property, research areas, research what properties perform well, what's got good rental demand in certain areas, and speak to the people that know that if you're unaware how to kind of research areas throughout.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Fife that you're in, or Scotland, or the wider country.
And you're right. The week 4, speak to professionals, take your first steps, all the rest of it. Now, this is not perfect action. This is where most people, after doing this, quit.
Yeah,
because they've got the excitement from a course that they've been on, the people they're round about, the people that sold them the course, that wants to really sell them another course, then they realise it's like, I either need to buy this other course or I've not got any other way forward with this way because I don't understand what I'm doing yet. So they've rushed them off with it and set them off with it. And this is why it's so important to understand this and not quit at that point. It's you have to have a dream about what you want to achieve and keep that in mind, the end result. You have to have that, or you'll quit if you don't have that, because you just think, I'm going to be a millionaire and I'm going to be a millionaire next week. That's what you're given the impression by. And you get the excitement, you're caught up in everything else. And it's all external motivation. It's not internal. And your dream and your achievement at what you want to do is your internal motivation, why you want to do it. That's the whole point. And that's what gives you forward momentum. The mindset shift up here. This is so important. This is where everything really changes. Because wealth's not really about strategy. It's not just strategy overall. It's not that at all. I would argue wealth is all about your mindset. It's got nothing to do with money, really. It's how you work up there.
You perceive things, and
because you have to shift from your, and you've got it nicely written here, spending to investing. This is what I said about short-term thinking to long-term thinking.
Yeah.
This is why guys end up being better investors. I'll be honest, because men actually, just with caveman,
it's a genetic thing.
It's hardwired into them to think for the long term. Women think hardwired in to think short term because it's for nurturing and all the rest of it. This is back in, what do you call them, Darwin theory and all this.
It's like when you say, like,
but it goes back to caveman mentality, and it's hardwired into our DNA. We can't do anything about it. Just like men tend to have foveal vision, which is laser vision, laser focus, because they're hunting. Yeah, that's the thing. And women have peripheral because they've got children and they need to watch out for what's going on around about them. Yeah, that's how you're hardwired. That's no other choice. And anybody, we're not saying, oh, you've got to have children and all the rest of it. Let's get off of that subject completely. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And it won't change. We're hardwired for that. And it's a lot of process to try and do anything about that. You won't be able to do anything about it because it's into your DNA. So you've also fear. You've got to shift from the fear to calculated action. See what I had about the spreadsheet. I had done it on the spreadsheet on a 20-year plan or a 40-year plan, I think it was. And it was like I was going to have thousands of properties at the end.
I remember that, yeah.
And it's like it's bonkers now when I look back. But hey, I tell you what.
But it got you to where you are.
I am still desperate. I'm still optimistic at one day I'll be clearing out the house and I'll find this spreadsheet that I had.
Yeah.
Because it can't be thrown out. It's got to be somewhere.
You'll have it somewhere, and and
I'll have it written down, and I'll be able to unfold it, and it'll be all, because it was all in bits and pieces, and it was just written down by hand, and it was really worn to the point where it would actually fall apart if you folded it out into sections. And I thought, if I find this will be fantastic just to look back on and see exactly how it worked out in comparison.
And that's what kept you driven and kept you kind of focused on.
It did, because I just looked at it every single time and thought, this is logical. But then I got frustrated because I thought I need to get there as fast as possible, and it was all about getting there as fast as possible and working above the threshold all the time. That's what really causes burnout. But so the lessons I've learned about that is, like, it's okay to be bored. You can wait. There's plenty of opportunities going to come up in the future. I'll guarantee you that. Because when everything's tanks, everybody runs to the hills and they start selling off. And when they're selling off, it's your opportunity to take advantage of that, because they're all desperately wanting to exit. And you're like, yeah, this is a great opportunity now, because you know what happens over the next 20 years from that point.
Yeah. And property, I think there is one question that changes everything. And it's like what we spoke about in terms of thinking about property value as opposed to just a deposit in there. You need to stop asking yourself, do you know, can I afford this? And start asking yourself and looking at it like, will this grow in value? Because wealth isn't built in just a moment or a short term. It's built over time. And as you said, do you know,
well, if it's property, it will grow in value, definitely. There's no doubt about that over the long term. It will grow in value. Unless you bought something like one of these flats with these huge extortionate factor fees that are built in, and people are taking huge hits on that now. But there's going to be at some point in time in the future, there'll be a government intervention, and they'll combat that, and then all these property prices will recover as a result. So the people that have actually stayed with it or reinvested in it, because when you're buying it and you're renting it, somebody's in it anyway. So what do you care? It's financing the debt at this point in time. The government then steps in and changes that, and then it's happy days, huge appreciation in value as a result of that. So that's probably what will happen in the future. There'll be some sort of intervention, definitely, to that, because it has been a growing problem with factors being appointed straight away to housing, well, not housing estates, but the flats, the apartments, the huge blocks that are getting built, and they're just taking advantage of that at that point in time. And things like, for example, train stations appear and infrastructure improvements appear. Millions and hundreds of millions of pounds get put into the area. I mean, look at London. Look at the areas in London that were no-go years and years ago, how affluent they are now in comparison.
Prices are just, they're so sought after, extortionate prices, like very on trend to live there.
You could almost guarantee you've got a shitty place in London at this point in time that in 20 years' time it will be one of the most affluent areas going. Mm-hmm. But so that's you have to understand these trends and how things are going, and you have to understand it's like you've no realised any profit or loss until you actually sell the asset. So what do you care if you lose in value short term, because you're still making money out of it? So what does it matter? Because over the long term it will probably increase anyway.
That will probably do a circle and increase.
Now remember, take advice on this first before you do anything else. Don't just assume, oh, Jim said everything will go up in value anyway, so I thought I would take a huge leap of faith and actually just invest in something that I'm actually paying out money now for. No, just to keep it going, because I know it's going to turn around in the future. I saw that happening before the credit crunch. Folk did that. So it's built over time wealth.
Yeah.
It's not built in the moment. Appreciation, the income that comes from it, and consistency and application it, and learning. It's not a get rich quick. It's you need to get yourself positioned or get position early. You don't really need to position yourself early. I would be honest about that and say, because everybody says, oh, I missed the boat and you took it. Well, if you're 30 years from now, you've no missed the boat if you invest now. Because it'll be an appreciating asset at that point in time. So I think that's what they don't realise. Let's close off and let's start closing off and say this. Okay, what's your thoughts on this, Richard?
I think to bring together what we've been talking about today, I mean, let's look at what the old rule was. And the old rule that we started off looking at, it was work, earn, spend, retire. And that was what the new rule that we're trying to obviously explore here is earning, investing, ownership, and scaling up. And that's where we've obviously come in. I mean, property has been the topic of subject. There is other investments, but property isn't just something that you buy, it's something that you build. It grows in value, it generates income, and it creates the options for your future. I think that's quite important. What would you say is the most important?
Here's the most important part, though. Right. I know. You don't need 10 properties. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need everything figured out at the beginning. You don't need analysis paralysis. Yeah. You need to do something. You just need to start. Done is better than perfect at this point in time. One decision, one shift, one step into the new rule. The new rule isn't, because, I mean, the truth behind all this is that the new rule isn't coming. It's already here. Yeah. We're doing this already. And some people will go, well, it's not really a new rule because I'm doing this already. Yeah, I know that, but
you're ahead of the game there.
Some people are still stuck in this old diagram of how they get by. home to work, home to work, home to work, and
Yeah.
live for the weekend and all the rest of it, and never invest or save for the future. And it's like you are gonna have a serious shock when you get to your old age. I'll tell you, if you ever get there, because by that time you'll probably be working all the time.
Burnt out.
You'll still be worried and stressed about the whole thing because you'll know I've actually planned for your future, and you won't be able to retire, and you'll probably end up shortening your life because of that, because of the worry it comes with it. It's already here. The only question is, will you play the game? Because it is a game.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you just need to know the rules. And I think that anybody watching, obviously, this is all drawn from your experiences, Jim, and your journey and knowledge and things. But always seek advice for professionals. And if you've got any questions, feel free to jump in the comments. You could reach out to me direct. My email address, I think, is attached to the post here. I'm happy to answer any questions. And we'll be back next week as usual for the Wealth Creation Show.
Absolutely.
So thanks for that, Jim. That was good. Great. Bye.